Good afternoon, Year 3. This is your Encompass lesson for this week. It's Monday, the 1st of February 2021, and just like on my page, you need that date written on the very top line and underlined as neatly as possible. Okay, I've not put any words on our word wall today because I want you to send them through to me and Mrs. Edwards, okay? And let us know what words you think need to be on our word wall for next week. So some words that we've looked at or have come up lots and lots over the last few weeks. On to your anchor task, okay? So you need to write anchor skills. And then what I want you to do is write down 3 things you have learnt about ancient Egypt so far. So you can number them 1, 2 and 3. And I want sentences telling me what you have learnt. So it could be 3 facts, it could be an opinion about something you've learnt, but 3 things about what you have learnt about ancient Egypt so far. Once you've done that, you can unpause the video and you can carry on. Okay, so this is just your success criteria for today. So we are looking at what is mummification, and by the end of the lesson you will understand the process of mummification, and your 3 points on your success criteria are: I can explain and discuss the key points of the mummification process, I can describe and explain the process of mummification, and I can explain why ancient Egyptians used the process of mummification. So they just move on from one another quite nicely. Okay then, so what is a mummy? So a mummy is a body that has been preserved after death. It could be a human or an animal. So it wasn't just humans that the ancient Egyptians turned into mummies. Why did the Egyptians preserve bodies? So the ancient Egyptians believed that when they died, their soul left their bodies, and after they were buried, their soul would return and together with the body would live forever in the afterlife when the world had ended. Unless their body was preserved, it would be no good in the afterlife. So they believed that if you didn't preserve the body, you would not be reunited with your soul and live on in the afterlife. Did all Egyptians preserve bodies? But it says here not everybody could afford to because it was a very expensive process and it took around 70 days to complete. So that's a really, really long time. So if you think there's either 30 or 31 days in a month, that's nearly 3 months that it takes, okay, just over 2 months to complete the mummification process. So how did it start? So the first ancient Egyptians didn't go through the long process. They just buried people in small pits in the sand. And then the bodies dehydrated in the dry heat of the desert and it preserved them naturally. So that's how they came across it. But the downside to this was the risk of the bodies being eaten by wild animals. You didn't want to enter the afterlife with a half-eaten body after all. To stop this happening, they started using coffins. But when the bodies weren't lying on the sand, they didn't dehydrate, so they decayed. So that means they became rotten. By 3400 BC, they developed the method that they are famous for today. So it all started because they buried people in the sand, and because of the dry heat of the desert, they dehydrated. They tried to move on and improve their method by using coffins, and realised that because they weren't in the sand, they didn't dehydrate, so became rotten. So, the process. The body was taken to a place called the Beautiful House, but it wasn't as beautiful as the name suggests. The body was cleansed with palm wine and rinsed with water from the River Nile. So again, this is why the River Nile is so important, and we've spoken about it every lesson. Okay, because even here at the end of life, they are still reliant on the River Nile. Sometimes they would use a slatted bed on a slant, and this would let fluids drain off and out of the body and allow them to wrap the strips of linen around. So their organs, okay. So a cut was made on the left side of the body and the organs were removed to stop the body decomposing. The liver, lungs, intestines and stomach were washed and dried in natron, and either wrapped in cloth to place in the body later or stored in canopic jars. The heart, which is responsible for intelligence and emotion, was left in the body as it would be needed in the afterlife. And natron is a natural salt, okay, and we're going to learn a lot about that today. Canopic jars had 4 different heads representing the 4 sons of Horus. So you've got Hapi, or Hapi, the baboon-headed god, and he looked after the lungs. Imsati, and it looked after the liver. This one is a jackal-headed god looking after the stomach. And I'm not even going to try and say this one because I haven't practiced. And it is a falcon-headed god to look after the intestines. If anybody can work out how to say that one, I will give you 5 dojos because I can't. Okay, the brain. So the brain wasn't thought to be important during these times, and what they did is they pushed a long hook up through the nose and smashed the brain into pieces, and then they'd either pull it out through the nose or lift the body so the brain, which is now liquid, would drain out through your nose. This prevented them having to damage the head or the skull, so it meant they didn't have to crack the skull open and go in, they could go up through the nose, which is a bit disgusting really. Okay, so 75% of your body is water, and wet things rot very quickly. So the body was dried inside and out with natron, and it absorbed the moisture, but it could take 40 to 50 days. And this is why the process takes so long, because of the dehydration of the body. So further preservation. Unless they were put in canopic jars, the dried organs would be replaced, or the body would be filled with sawdust, rags, or leaves so it kept its shape. Okay, so in order to preserve the skin, it was coated in a resin made from plants. The body was then wrapped in strips of linen, hundreds and hundreds of meters of it, and up to 20 layers thick, so it was a very elaborate process. The head and the neck would be wrapped first, then the fingers and the toes would be wrapped individually. The arms and legs were wrapped separately. Between the layers of the linen they would place amulets, which would protect the dead person in the afterlife. As well as amulets, inscribed pieces of papyrus were placed between the layers. Words from the Book of the Dead were placed between the hands. Okay, so we'll research that a bit later on. So the amulets, okay, so you've got this one here. This is the Isis knot, or the tayet, and it would be placed at the neck to protect the body. The heart amulet was placed over the heart to protect it. The scarab was placed over the upper abdomen. It was a dung beetle which represented rebirth and the rising of and the setting of the sun. And the eye of Horus was placed on the lower abdomen over the cut to remove the organs. So that would go over where they cut you to take your organs out. And it was a symbol of good health that was shaped like the eye of the falcon god Horus. So the mask of Anubis. While the wrapping took place, a priest wearing a mask of Anubis would read out spells to ward off evil spirits and help the journey to the afterlife. And he was the jackal-headed god of the dead. Mumia, a tar-like paste, was used to glue the wraps of linen together, and this is where the term mummy came from. The final piece of linen was placed over the body. So Egyptian coffins. A death mask that looked like the person when they were alive would be made and put on top of the mummy so that their soul could find them. So this is Tutankhamun's here. And then the mummy is put into a wooden coffin, and the wooden coffin might be put into another coffin, and perhaps even another one after that. These coffins would be decorated beautifully and elaborately. The first coffin might be shaped and painted like a body. The box-shaped outer coffin might have eyes painted on it so the person could see, a false door on the inside so the person could step out, and hieroglyphics on the very outside. For the funerals, they held them and funeral songs were sung. A ritual called the opening of the mouth was performed so that the dead person would be able to eat, drink, and speak in the afterlife. The very final stage was to put the coffins into a sarcophagus, which is a stone coffin, and then place it in the tomb with valuable objects, food, and drink for the journey to the afterlife. So I have gone through lots and lots of information there, and you can keep going back and listening again or reading the slides yourself, okay? But the first thing I want you to do is write the question here, what is a mummy, and describe what you think a mummy is based on what I've just said and what you've read, okay? Then once you've done that, you have got this sheet here, and it is on the website for you to download. If you can't do that, that's fine. You can just draw it. If you've got plain paper, that would be better. Otherwise, in your book is fine. And what you need to do is draw a picture for each step of mummification, and then write a sentence about what happened. So, how did they clean the body? What happened to the organs? What happened to the brain? I can't wait to see your pictures for that one. How did they dry the body out? What did they stuff it with? How did they wrap it? And then about the coffins. So I've gone through every single step so far, and you can go back and listen, okay? On the PDF on the website, there are already some pictures attached to the document. They are not for you to use and stick on, they're just for you to get some ideas of what you could draw. The important bit is the sentence that you write, because that determines where on the success criteria you achieve today, okay? If you've got any questions, just let me or Mrs. Edwards know. But apart from that, we can't wait to see your work. Upload it as soon as you've done it so we can have a look. And I'll be back next Monday with another Encompass lesson. Have a lovely afternoon.